Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on Candy's Valuation Cycle Best Practices. My name is Mbeki Ndlela. I work as a technical consultant here at the RIBCCS offices in Centurion, a city in the Gauteng province of South Africa. It is my pleasure to present this webinar to you. Today, I'll be discussing the Candy's Valuation Cycle's Best Practices, which is a process for managing the project's financial performances. Due to the large number of people logged into this webinar today, we will not be able to answer any questions. However, you are more than welcome to submit your questions during the session using the provided function on the screen. At the end of the webinar, we will revisit these questions individually and send the answers to everybody that is registered for this webinar via email. Please also note that the webinar will be recorded, which means a link will be available for downloads. It is also worth noting that there is a webinar once a month on various Candy topics. So even if you are unable to attend the webinar at the given time frame, please do register for one, as this will entitle you to receiving a recorded copy of that webinar. We will now get started with our webinar. Our main agenda today is the monthly valuation cycle. We will go through the steps involved in that process from when you prepare your initial valuation all the way to the cost reporting. And we'll also look at the preparations for the next valuation. So the first step in that process is the initial valuation setup. We'll quickly have a look at that, and then the following topic, we will also have time to look at the post-tender checklist. The following topic after the checklist will be the variation order pricing, and after that topic, we will be looking at the subcontract progress measure. And there we will look at how to progress quantities of work done by our subcontractors. One after that will be the contractor's progress measure, or the main valuation progress measure. Once we are done with the main valuation, we will then go on and print some reports. We will look at the interim payment claim report. Our seventh topic, it will have to do with the usage of the cost worksheets for cost to completion, which will then lead us to cost reporting. That will be our eighth topic on our webinar today. Once we have gone through all those steps in the process, we will look at how do we then prepare for next valuation. Our first topic, we will look at the initial valuation setup. Now, the privilege of using Candy is the continuity that the system provides with regards to the usage of the same information for various tender goals. What this simply means is the data that is used at estimating can later be repurposed for other project objectives at post-tender. As in today's instance, our focus will be on the valuation using the information that was used for tendering. And we will be using that information to talk about or to discuss the entire valuation cycle. Now, how do we set up our initial valuation? We first need to make sure that we have the correct job, we're working with the correct information, and the valuation date has been set. We need to establish the valuation date and set it accordingly. And to keep a useful record of our work, we need to specify the valuation number together with the valuation title. Once all of that is done, we need to assess the information and make sure that it is now ready for use at post-tender stages. Now, to make sure that we do not miss a step, there is a post-tender checklist that can be used as a guide which can be found in the Candy Help Center. What you'll notice on our webinar today is that I will now and again be referring you to this help center, Candy Help Center, which contains a lot of helpful material for your daily use of the system. To access our help center, you simply click on the support button in Candy, then access the help center. Now that will take you to our Candy Help Center website, where we will find useful topics and trending articles. You will see that we also have our Candy training courses. For instance, if you look at the trending articles there on your top right corner, there is a C203 post-tender control course, which is one of the training courses that we offer. We have 1 and 2 day courses that are designed to suit your requirements and to help you make the most of Candy's powerful features. You can also contact us using our contact details, as you can see on the screen, for customer support when you need additional assistance. Now, to view the post-tender checklist, you can either click on the valuation tile and follow the steps therein, or just use the search bar at the top of the screen, as you can see. That will then take you to the list. You will also get a link to open a printable copy of the list. You can click on that link and then it will give you this printable checklist. So this is my example to show you what that printable checklist look like. There are several important points that this list covers, from basic things such as making sure that we first copy the job after we've received it from the estimating department and we want to get it ready for our post-tender control. We make sure that we preserve the bid rates and quantities. We ensure that we have final quantities in place, for instance. We look at the pricing checks, and we look at all the things that are listed here on our list. But you will see that all the boxes need to be checked, and that is exactly what I did while I was going through my estimate information and preparing my job for this webinar. I will now go to Candy. What I will do here, I will access the job that I have prepared using the post-tender checklist as my guide. The first thing before I access the job that you will notice is that, as per the checklist guide, I made a copy of my tender job and I renamed that copy and I called it my valuation setup. I will work on this copy and I will only use my original job or my original tender job as my reference throughout the remodeling process. I'll then access the job, and you will see that as soon as I do that, I'm quickly taken to the valuation module. This is where I've actually set up my initial valuation. Okay, to do that, I actually visited my valuation manager. What I did there was to set the date for my initial valuation, and then I gave my valuation a title. As you can see, I also gave it a valuation number so that I can track my valuations. You will not see the number for now because I've set it at valuation 0, because it is just a setup of this valuation. But before doing all of that, I was in the estimating module. I'll just quickly close this document. I'll move over to estimating. This is where I took some time to thoroughly inspect the inherited information from the estimating or from the estimate job. What I did was to check for my irrelevant and excess information that may have been relevant at tender stage but not suitable for post-tender project control. This includes things such as my unused price codes, okay, which I removed. I also went and checked my resources and made sure that I remove all the resources that I am not going to use for post-tender project control. So I essentially removed all the unnecessary codes and access information that I needed to remove. And thereafter, I went to check if the rates and the quantities that are designed for post-tender control in Candy, such as my selling rate. I'll just open a document to have a look at those rates and quantities. You will see that I have my selling rate in place. This is a very important rate that we use at post-tender control. It formulates the information that gets sent to our clients. It is the external information. And I also wanted to check if I do have final quantities in place. Remember now, the final quantities we use that to update our budget and calculate our remaining cost and remaining work. We also have a webinar that speaks more on these selling rates and final quantities. And you can easily access that on our estimating webinars in the Candy Help Center that we uh, touched on earlier in this webinar introduction. But then these are just some of the checks that are listed on the post-tender checklist, which really is a great help in ensuring that our valuation information is free of errors. Now, at post-tender stages, say for instance, we get to our we arrive at our first valuation date. There may be new developments that we would want to include to our bill of quantities, items that may call for some variations to the original scope of works. It could be a substitution of the original item, or an addition, or even an omission of an item from the original specification. We generally refer to these items as variation orders. And in Candy Valuation, they are documents with built-in functionality that accommodates for the adding of the variation orders into the bill, the pricing of the variation orders, and managing of the variation orders using variation order coding and status allocation. You can also monitor the variation orders progress. Once again, to learn more about the management of variation orders, you can visit our Candy Help Center, and in Candy Tutorials, you will find a webinar that covers this topic comprehensively. So you will notice that throughout our webinar today, I will be referring you to our Help Center quite repeatedly. And the reason for this is that the valuation cycle that we're covering today, or that we're discussing today, touches on a lot of these topics, and these are the topics that we have presented before on our past webinars. And because of that and the limited time, I will not be able to go through all of those topics in detail. But as you will see, I will now and again refer you to our webinar. And if you need more detail on a particular topic that I'll touch on as I'm going through this valuation cycle, you can just go back and visit that topic. Now, going back to Candy, I've prepared another job for our first valuation, so I'll close this one. And to price my variation orders, I will access my valuation number 1 job. And while I'm in there, I will move again to my valuations applications tab. Now I will access my documents manager in there, and I will look for document 3.1, which is variation order pricing. This is the document that I will use to price my variation orders. It is a standard document, and as you can see, it has the relevant variation order columns. Okay, these are necessary for me to price my VOs or to track them. You can see that I have my variation order code column here, as well as my variation order approval, that is to manage the VO statuses. And at the bottom of my bill, you will see that I have a section for my variation orders, but these are just the same as any bill items for now. As soon as you allocate a code, a VO code, to any bill item, now you're telling the system that this is an item that belongs to a variation order. Where do we get these VO codes? In my definitions and settings, heading 3.2 VO codes, variation order codes, you'll see that I've already created one VO code there. This is the VO code that you will use then to allocate to your variation order bill items. They will then help you in the overall control of your VO items in the bill of quantities. Now, to allocate these codes, it's very easy. You just double click alongside the bill item that needs to be allocated to the VO, and then you can allocate the VO code just by double clicking. All right, as soon as you allocate a VO code to a bill item, you will see that it automatically gets a variation order status. Currently it is not approved. Okay, so you are able to manage these variation orders to say that after a client has given you instructions, you can then now approve these variation orders. And you'll see that what is also nice about these codes is that one VO code can be allocated to multiple bill items, as I've just done, that form part of one VO or variation work. This will allow you to approve the entire VO if that is the case, or just some sections of that VO depending on the client's instructions. Now, the other element that is crucial, or that plays a big part in the valuation process, is the management of subcontract progress measures. See, at post-tender, among other things, the construction team will usually decide on the construction methods and whether some work will be subcontracted or self-performed. Now, a bill that will be used for valuations must be structured in a manner that allows for both the valuation of the subcontracted work as well as the work that will be self-performed. To do this in Candy, a subcontract bill must be created in the subcontract manager. This bill will be created using the items from the main bill of quantities. These items will obviously consist of quantities which can be awarded to one or more subcontractors who will be doing that portion of work on the main contractor's behalf. So when this is done properly, it will enable the contractor to record his subcontractor's progress and use that information to create a subcontractor payment certificate and to update his quantities in the main bill of quantity for main valuation. Again, we have a webinar available on our list of Candy tutorial videos. You can access this and get more information as to how Candy's subcontract manager is used to allocate and manage work done by subcontractors. To see that once more, as you can see on my screen, I will refer you again to our Candy Help Center. And then once you get there, you look for Candy tutorials. In there, you will find, among other things, our webinars. Then you can go and find a webinar on subcontract manager. You can see at the bottom of my screen there is my webinar relating to subcontract manager. And these are the topics that are included in that webinar and comprehensively discussed in that webinar. Now, in our first valuation job, I went to the subcontract manager module. I'm just going to close this document. I'm going to move from valuations to subcontract manager. What I did there, I accessed my subcontract manager, and to prepare a bill for my subcontracted work, I just went to my document 1.1, of which is my subcontract bill. And in my example here, you can see that this is my paint work that I'm going to subcontract to an external specialist. I created this bill by simply pulling in items from the main bill of quantities, of which is very easy. You just click on the tools button, you import the bill items, and then you import by the bill items by page and trade, and then it will take you to this little dialog box, and then you can say you want to look for all the paint items in all the pages, and you can then import those items just like that. And you can see that I've imported these items. I've also inserted rates and quantities. These can differ from my bill because these are actually the subcontractors awarded rates and quantities. And this is the bill that I will use to progress the work that will be done by my subcontracted painter or my subcontractor. And to award this work to my preferred subcontractor, all I did was just to go to my subcontract manager button, and then I went on to fill out this form that you see on the screen here with my subcontractor's details, and then the system accepted. That work as the work that will be done by my subcontractor, or the work that has been awarded to the subcontractor, as shown at the top of the screen here. Now, after all the inspections and the checks, I can now confidently say at this stage, this job is ready for my first valuation or the progressing of my my quantities. So our first scenario will be that for our first valuation, the subcontractor submits to us the quantities of work that they've done on site. And now what we need to do is to go to their bill and progress the work. Now, while I'm in the subcontract manager, I will access my documents this time, or my documents manager, and then I will access my document 1.3, of which is my subcontract bill with progress updates. Now, what you will see is that under the invoice quantity, all right, I've recorded my subcontractors' quantities. So I record them in here, and then the system just populates them in the due quantity column and the pay quantity column. So the invoice quantities, these are the quantities that the subcontractor claim. This is the work that they claim they've done on site. And then the due quantities, these are the quantities that I have measured myself to double check his work. And then the pay quantity, these are the quantities that I will pay my subcontractor, and that information will reflect on his payment certificate. Now, after our subcontractor's quantities and work have been progressed in the subcontract manager, in the subcontract bill, we can then return our focus rather to the progressing of our main valuation. We now have full knowledge that Candy Valuations module delivers continuity between estimating and post-tender commercial control, and it is used on site to continuously capture and track progress measurements of a project. We need to measure our internal and external valuation quantities to generate a detailed allowable, firstly, and then also to generate the interim payment claim that gets submitted to our client. Now, in our valuation document, you'll see that we have different quantity columns. We have the actual quantity, we have the claimed quantity, we also have the paid quantity. The actual quantity is used for internal valuation. It is the cumulative quantity to date for the actual amount of work done on site. The actual quantity also generates the information which we will see at cost and allowable when preparing our cost report. We have the claimed quantity, which is for the external valuation, and it is for the recording of how much claim has been submitted to the client up to this point. And then we also have the paid quantity, of which is used to record how much the client has paid us to date. These are just some of the quantities that you will find in Candy. There are actually several quantities in our valuations document that serve for different valuation purposes and general control. Once again, as you can see on my screen, for more knowledge, I will like to refer you to the Candy tutorials on Candy or in the Candy Help Center. You can then go and click on webinars and look for the webinar on valuation quantities. And these are the topics that are discussed in length on that webinar. Now, going back to Candy, I will go back to the valuation module. And in here, I will then access my valuation documents manager. So here you can see that there are several documents that one may customize and use to capture the current progress. So that's exactly what I've done also. You will see that I've also renamed my valuation document as my favorite valuation entry document. What I did was to customize this document. I'll just double click on it so that I can open it. So as you can see that it is not just your standard valuation entry document. I've actually customized it to include some of the columns that I know I will need for my month-to-month quantity progressing. So what I did was just to add some of the columns, as you can see here. All right, these are the selected columns that I've added. I've actually added my VO columns. I've also added my subcontract code, and I've also added my take off quantity columns. Now you remember that we've actually subcontracted some work. Okay, we've appointed a subcontractor to do our paint work, and then we went into the subcontract manager in Candy. We opened his bill, and then we progressed some quantities. As you can see here, we have the subcontract total due quantities. What you'll notice is that those quantities do not automatically get updated into our to date actual quantity column in our main valuation. We need to update these quantities from the subcontract manager into our actual quantity under the main valuation columns. And to do that, it's easy. You can just highlight the area where you see your subcontractors items, or you can just right click on the column header of the to date actual quantity column, and then you can update from the subcontract manager, and you want to update from subcontract due quantity. And then you can just click on yes to confirm. I'm just going to click on OK. So all the quantities that you would want to update from the subcontract total due quantity from all the appointed subcontractors will be updated. So you will have noticed that I also have my QTO columns on my far right here, we also have QTO in Candy, which is our on-screen quantity takeoff application. It allows for any electronic drawings to be attached. You can see that I already have my drawings here in my drawing list, which I added by just simply clicking on the attach button and added the drawings that I needed. What is nice with using QTO is that while you're busy measuring on your drawings, you can actually look at your bill. You have the full view of your bill. You can see here on my bottom left, this is actually my measurement bill. Everything that I measure here, I can simply link it to my bill items in my BOQ. For better access or better view, you can pan around these documents. As you can see now, it is much bigger. You can also make it full screen. And then once you're done taking your measurements, a takeoff list will be created. And then you can simply link bill items by just right clicking on them. And then you'll see here that it gives you the option to link this bill item to your takeoff list. The other feature here, of which I find very helpful, is that not only do you use uh, QTO for the creation of the bills at tender stage, you can actually go to your settings and then choose the quantities that you're measuring for. So you can actually use QTO at tender stages when you want to double check your clients' quantities, or you want to do some remeasures, or you can use it at post tender stages to progress your actual quantities, to measure your claim quantities, as well as your final quantities. So there's obviously quite a lot that gets covered in a QTO training. We have a 305 QTO training that you can visit in our Candy's Help Center and book yourself a one-day training. So please do feel free to go to the Candy's Help Center and learn more about this powerful measuring tool. Now I will just go back to my valuation bill. And I will go through my QTO quantities. I'm going to use my QTO quantity column. I would obviously go to all the pages or through all the pages just to make sure that there aren't any actual quantities that needs updating for our current valuation. And as you can see that we have some items that were measured in QTO. As you'll see that that is the quantity that was measured in QTO, and then what kind of quantity was did we measure. Remember, now I did mention that you can also measure for your bill of quantities. You can measure for post tender, as I just did now, hence the actual quantity here. You can measure for your claim and paid quantity as well. But now you will see that these three items have measurements that I would like to update to my to date quantity. So I'll just highlight the area where I see my QTO items with those quantities. And then I'll just simply right click on the highlighted area, and what I want to do it is to copy from the selected quantity, and there's a number of items that you can choose from here, but then you will see that we also have QTO actual quantity, and those are the quantities that we want to bring across. I'll just green tick them and click yes to confirm, and then click here OK. So to clean it up, it's very easy. You can see here we have just a bit of a decimalization here that you would want to maybe up round or change the quantity decimals. It's easy to do that. You can just click on OK and change it maybe to 2 decimals and click on OK, and you have your QTO quantities copied across to your main valuation. Now, after attending to those different areas, I can now go back to my bill and actually progress the rest of the work that was done on site or achieved for this current period. Now to progress, you have a choice of using the to date to date actual quantity column, where you can just punch in the numbers, or you can use your actual percentage final column, where you can just apply the percentage of work that was achieved for this current period. As you can see, I've just highlighted all of those items. I can right click on the highlighted area, apply my percentage. I just want to progress all of that work to 100%. Some of the work here also want to progress to 100%. Now remember, at the bottom of our bill, we have our variation order. Okay, so you will see that I have quantities here, but my variation order is split into 3 items, and you will see that some of the items in the variation order have been approved and 1 item hasn't been approved. Then you will go to your to date actual quantity, and you would progress the approved items. You can use the to date actual quantity column, or you can use your actual percentage final column, right? And then you wouldn't obviously want to progress the item that hasn't been approved. So if you do by mistake progress it, the system will take it as the to date actual quantity, but you can see that it will not actually update your claim quantity and your paid quantity, because that information shouldn't go to the client as it has not been approved. Now, after progressing the quantities and progressing the work that we've done for this period, we can then go and print different reports in Candy that will help in analyzing the work that has been done to date. I'll just close this document, and then I'll access my report manager. So you'll see that I only have 2 reports that I've prepared for our webinar today, but actually there are a number of reports that can be customized, that can be displayed and printed, previewed and printed, and you can use a number of these different reports to actually analyze the allowable to date, the cost that is associated with the work that is been done to this point, and also keep track of your resources performances. So I'm just going to go back to my job reports, and then this is the report that I would like for us to have a look at. It is the continuous valuation bill based on selling. I'll just quickly preview this report. Now when we go through this report, you can see that it will help us analyze our claimed amount for the previous period, and then obviously because this is our first valuation, the previous period column will be empty, or it will have the zeros, as you can see. But we have values on the claimed amount for this month and this period, and also our cumulative or to date claimed amount on my far right. Okay, so you can also go to the next page, and then you can also see that we've progressed our variation order. You can see it here at the bottom, and these are the values associated with those quantities. And because this report is based on the selling rate or selling amounts, we can then use it as the supporting report or supporting information for the interim payment certificate, which is submitted to our client each and every month. We can also analyze our resources as well. You will see that I have this resource analysis report here that I've prepared for our webinar today. I'll just quickly preview this report. Now, what we are looking at is just the classification of our resources by their cost codes. You'll see that I've added a little bit of color here just for us to highlight those cost codes that we've used to classify all the resources that we have used for this project. We can then analyze each resource's to date usage quantity, the remaining quantity, as well as the final usage for each resource that we have in this report. There are several reports available in Candy for post-tender management, and to learn more on that, please visit our Candy Help Center. You can click on the valuation topic as you can see here on the screen. You can go to our webinars, and there you will find a webinar on post-tender reports for management. You can then you can just download that webinar and go through it as soon as you get some time to do so. Now, let us review what we have discussed up to this point. So we first looked at how to prepare a job or an estimate for post-tender control. And as part of the initial setup, we looked at the post-tender checklist, which helps in ensuring that the information has been thoroughly checked. Remember, you can always go to our Candy Help Center to just download that the tender checklist. Excuse me. So that part of our process, we looked at the management of variation orders. We visited the subcontract manager to understand how subcontracted work is managed with regards to valuations. We then progressed the main bill and imported the due quantities from the subcontract manager. I also showed you how to use a QTO and import quantities from QTO. We then analyzed our first valuation using the interim payment claim report. Now, our next topic, I would like for us to go into Candy's cost and allowables. We want to look at how cost rates and cost worksheets can be used to manage adjustments to the remaining cost at post-tender stages. So we've done our valuation, and then there's some work. Maybe the valuation was just the 10, 30, or 30% of the work that we have progressed on site. So there's 70% that is left. How do we then manage changes that apply or that arise at that stage? This will obviously lead us to our last important aspect of the valuation process that we're discussing today, and that is our cost reporting. So before we get to cost worksheets and rates, I'd like for us to look at what Candy's cost and allowable application can do for us, and what is it exactly that we can achieve by using it correctly. So you'll see on my screen here, I'm just going to go through a few things that we get from using cost and allowables in Candy. So cost and allowables in Candy is an application used to monitor the financial performances of a project. It helps monitor the to-date allowables that is generated in Candy's valuations, and it also helps in monitoring the to-date cost that is captured in the accounting system, like BillSmart, for instance. It also helps in monitoring the remaining and the at completion allowables as well as cost using the cost worksheets. Now, with that in mind, let us look at Candy's cost rates and worksheets. Cost rates and worksheets in Candy are used to make cost adjustments to the remaining cost at post-tender stages. We can look at the resources cost rate, and we can monitor changes using our worksheets in there by changing the production outputs, changing the wastage allowances. We can even change the construction methods to accommodate the changes that will arise at post tender. So all of this can be done in cost rates and cost worksheets. Now to demonstrate, I will just go to Candy and I will exit this job. There is a job that I have prepared for this topic. I'll access this job here. So because of that continuity that Candy offers, the information that we will need in cost and allowables will be the information that is generated in valuations. What I mean by that is, before we even go to valuations, there are just some few checks that we need to do in valuations. We need to go and check if actual quantities have been updated in our valuation bills together with the actual to date amounts. I've actually uh, uh, customized a document for that. I'm going to look at my document 1.2 here, which is selling bill of quantities. Now in this document, you'll see that I've actually added another column here for actual quantities. So if I calculate here at the bottom, you'll see that my net amount, or my actual net amounts, they balance to that 17 million. Now, if you're not going to be using the if you're not going to be using this document, you can always access the valuation manager, and then you can just calculate here at the bottom. Now you'll see that I have my first valuation and I have progress quantities here, and these are my actual to date allowable amounts. This is current, this is remaining, and final. But the point that we want to take from this is that when we get to cost and allowables, these figures, especially the actual to date allowable, we should be able to see it there, and then we will put it side by side with the cost that we will import, and then we will be able to monitor how we've done for this valuation. Now that is our 17 million there. I'll just close this document. With that in mind, I'll move to cost and allowables. In cost and allowables, I'll just quickly access my documents manager there, and I will use my cost and allowable by period document. Okay, you can see that I'm just looking at all this information. It is categorized by the task. I can quickly customize this document. I can remove the task so that I make everything easier for everybody. I'll just preview this document summarized into my cost codes. I'm going to click on OK, and now you can see that we have a nice and a concise analysis or summary. And you shouldn't be alarmed by these figures here in the red. Okay, it's just not taking into consideration that I have unapproved VOs, and then to fix that you can just go to tools, cost and allowables by settings, and then you would want to include all the VOs as well as the bill items. I'm going to click on OK now, and then you will see now that it has taken every information that I have in the bill into consideration. Now we have the allowable to date, but we do not have the cost. And in order for us to make sense of how the project has performed up to this point, we obviously need to look at our allowables, and we need to also compare that with our cost, and then we'll have our variance, which will be based on our allowable minus our cost to date, and the system will also give us a projection of our remaining cost and our remaining allowable, as well as our at completion cost and at completion allowable. Now to import cost, I'll close this document. I'll go back to my document manager. I want to access my document 3.1 cost import. This is the document that we use in Candy to import cost. So it doesn't matter whether the cost is from an external file like an Excel file, that is what I'm going to use for today's webinar, or from BillSmart. We are able to import cost for cost and allowables. But I think it is just worth noting that when you import cost from BillSmart, it is very seamless and it requires less adjustments. But for today's webinar, I'm going to import my cost from an Excel file. And I'll start the import and I'll identify the columns accordingly. I'll click on continue once I'm done, and I'm just going to click on this to confirm that I'm happy with the information that came through. So this is my imported cost. You can see my bottom line here, 16 million. But then if I needed to do more adjustments, I would use these columns here in between. So this is the imported cost. We would apply the adjustments as required, and this would be our actual cost. So if there are some reallocation of cost, accruals that we need to take into consideration, some subcontractors that needs to still be paid for this period, and so forth, would punch in those numbers. It allows you to punch in numbers manually, and then at the end of the day you would see your cost right here at the bottom. And then before you release this cost for cost and allowables, you'd want to check it. Remember, we've imported this cost from an Excel sheet, so you would want to check the imported data. You'd want to check for task codes, cost codes, and if you have bill codes, you'd want to check for that as well. I'll green tick, and then the system tells me that it's picked up some inconsistencies. I'll just click on yes, and then it will take me to those problem areas. I'll just select all of them and delete them. Now I'll run my check again, and you can see that my information has been validated successfully. Once I'm happy with my information, I can just click on tools and release the cost for cost and allowables. So this cost that I see down here, I should be able to see it on my cost and allowable by period document. As you can see that I've released for cost and allowable. I've released this information for my cost and allowables. Let us then go to our cost and allowable document, which is 1.1. I'm going to open up this document. Now we can see that we've brought in the cost, and it is against the allowable that we have progressed from our valuations, and there's a variance for that. So what does this allow us to do? It allows us to monitor our to date cost and allowable, our remaining allowable and cost, as well as our at completion allowable and cost. So when you hover your mouse above these columns, you will see that you get a little help file, which is a question mark for each and every column. So if you want to get more understanding on how these columns operate, you can just click on that help file, and then it will give you the math behind that calculation. And you can see here for at completion allowable, it is the final quantity times the net rate, and then it gives you more detail, and you can even click on these options at the bottom here to get more hints as well as more information. Now at this stage, we know that we have progress quantities, we've brought in cost, which basically means that we have done our first valuation. How do we then manage the changes going forward to the remainder of the work? Any change that's going to arise now with the remaining work, how would we manage that? You'll remember that we mentioned earlier that we have cost rates and cost worksheets in Candy. These cost rates and cost worksheets are used to make cost adjustments to the remaining cost at post-tender stages. So if we, for some reason, have to change any resource rates, we want to analyze some production methods and change them and all that stuff, we no longer work with the net rate. We no longer open up the net worksheet. We will use the net cost, we will use the cost worksheet, and we'll also use the cost rate. And in Candy, I'll go back to Candy quickly. I'll clean up this document. We have standard documents for cost worksheet adjustments. So if I go to my document manager, you will see that I have my bill with cost rates for cost worksheet adjustments. I also have my resource cost rate to completion. Let's just quickly open up our 6.1, of which is our cost worksheet adjustment, and have a look at that document. So what you will see here is that we have a cost rate as well as the net rate side by side, which means that while we were busy pricing this job using the net worksheet, the system was mimicking the way that we were pricing the job and duplicating that information and saving it in the cost rate. So the net worksheet and the net rate and the cost rate are identical at this stage. I will close this document for now. I'll go back to my documents manager, and I want us to have a look at our resources now. Select my document 7.1, of which is the resource cost rate to completion. Again here, what we see is our net rate, no longer a net worksheet, but the net rate as well as the cost rate. So these are all of our resources. It happens that right after maybe we've done our first valuation or second valuation and so forth, the remainder of the work, we get some rate changes. Okay, so there may be escalations or stuff like that. But where do we manage that? We will not obviously use now the net rate, because if you change the net rate, it will change the entire job. But we want to use the cost rate because it is the cost rate that we use in order for us to monitor the remaining cost at post-tender stages. Now, to demonstrate, I'm just going to go through and change a number of resources so that we can see the difference. But remember, before we do that, I just want to quickly draw attention back to our cost and allowable by period document. You can see now that for this current valuation, we were not expecting any losses. So everything is positive. We do not see any items here in the red or negative. So it means that we are expecting a positive result. I'm just going to close this, and then I'm just going to change a number of resources here for you to see the impact that this will have on our cost and allowables and on the remaining allowable as well as cost going forward. I will just change these resources randomly. Change the rate for my resources randomly. But what is important is that as I'm doing those changes, you can see that I am not fiddling with my final rate or my net rate. I'm monitoring those changes or those adjustments under my cost rate column. I think that is okay. It will definitely show us some differences when we go back to our cost and allowable document. Now I'll close this document. I'll go back to our cost and allowables by period, and you'll see that it has already calculated for me. And now we have, remember, we've just changed the labor's rate and we've put it up a bit, and you can see that now we have some items here in the red or negative. Now these are the items that would reflect problems on site that would need to maybe attend to promptly. But sometimes you are unable to do anything with the rate escalation or rate change of your resources. Therefore, this is where now your cost worksheet comes in. I'll close this document, and I'll go back to my document 6.1. to look at the cost worksheet for cost to completion. Now, we first need to make sure that we look at bill items that still have the remaining quantities and allowable. You remember that for this work, we've progressed some quantities, so it wouldn't help you to look at these items because they no longer have any quantity or remaining allowable. So what I'll do, I'll just do a quick sort and look for big value items. I'll sort descending. Now I can look for my big items here and revisit my pricing methods. I can just look at how I priced each and every item. If maybe there's a production calculation in there that I would want to manage my production output, I would change that. If I would want to look at my wastage percentages, I would go and change that in the cost worksheet. And even if I want to change the production methods, make sure that I maximize the work that's being done on site, and then I cushion the financial blows that I'm seeing in the cost and allowables document, I would go into the cost worksheet and make those necessary changes and adjustments. For instance, if I'm looking at my one brick wall in two half brick skins, that um, item still has final quantity there. There's remaining actual quantity. So I can maybe play around with how I've priced that item. But when I do that, what is very important is that I do not make the changes in the net worksheet, because this is what I was using for the entirety of the job. So if you want to make any changes at all, you would want to flip from the cost worksheet or the net worksheet, flip to the cost worksheet. Okay, so you can see now that you have a message there that the cost worksheet is identical to the net worksheet. And then if you want to make any changes, this is where you would make those changes. So if maybe I see that I'm losing a bit of money and I would want to get more value from my resources, I would change my production methods or my production outputs accordingly. And maybe I would reduce waste, and then I would store my cost worksheet. Now, when you look at the variance column for this item under my cost to completion columns, you will see that it has now changed from negative into a 93,000 that is positive. Okay, and then you'll see that my cost rate has gone down compared to my net worksheet. And I'll close this document to just quickly check how that has impacted my cost and allowables. Now you can see the upturn here. Before I made changes in that cost worksheet, the loss that we were experiencing here was really significant, and now it has gone down by a hundred thousand or so. Now I can report on this information. I'll just close this document and then access my report manager. So for cost reporting, this is where we would go. We would look at some of the reports that are found in here, and then I'll just preview one report in order for us to analyze this information. And now as you can see, this is my allowable summary cost report. It is summarized into my cost codes. Okay, you will see my allowable amounts to date, my allowable amounts remaining, and my allowable at completion. So to date, this is what I've progressed. This is what I can still progress against, and at completion, this is what I am most likely to see. So we've covered all the steps that are involved in the cycle that we're discussing today. The only thing that is left for me to do, it is just to exit this job, as this was my valuation number one. I'll quickly exit this job. Now I will duplicate this job, and the duplicate, I already had a duplicate there, but I'll just rename this duplicate to my second valuation. or valuation number 2. I'll click on OK, and I'll access my second valuation. I'll go back to my valuations applications tab to prepare for next valuation. And for me to do that, I will go to my valuation manager. There is my first valuation. I'll just calculate here at the bottom to look at how the current situation is. And then now you can see that for this valuation, this was what we progressed for current allowable, the actual to date allowable, and this is what is remaining. All right. You can then click on next valuation. The system will ask if you want to make a backup, but if you've made a copy, just like I did, you wouldn't want to do that. I want to change the date though for my next valuation period. And then you can see my valuation number. It's valuation number 2. The title, I would also correct that accordingly. Then click on OK. Now you will see that for this current valuation or valuation number 2, it will show me what had taken place previously. Let me just calculate that. What had taken place previously, and currently we have a space to progress our quantities, and this is the cumulative quantities, and this is the remaining that we can claim against. And basically that takes us to the full cycle of our valuation or our valuation process. So this also takes us to the end of our webinar for the month of May. Surely we can agree that Candy continues to be the leader in estimating and project control as a software. Please remember to email your local CCS office if you want to know more about the topics that were discussed today. We will keep you informed of the next webinar. And remember, if you are unable to join on the selected time, then please still register and for the webinar, and you will receive the recording, which you can then watch in your own time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Till the next webinar. Goodbye for now.